Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Matt here, and yeah, I'm sure you guys have already seen the news. The next expansion to Pokemon TCG Pocket has just been announced. It is A3, the A3 set, otherwise known as Celestial Guardians, and this is going to be a Generation 7 and Alola themed expansion. I am super excited. So the trailer already came out. We're not going to watch the trailer because I assume everybody has seen it already. In this video, what we're going to do is take a look at all of the new cards that were teased or shown or leaked at this point. This will be spoilers for this video, but what we're going to do is take a look at all of the cards and we're going to talk meta. We're going to talk strategy. We're going to talk metagame. We're going to talk about how all of these new cards are going to be impacting the format as it will be when these cards are released. This set is coming on the 30th of April. That is Wednesday, April 30th, and I am very excited. I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of different things already about this, but yeah, let's just say that there's going to be some massive changes to the metagame. A couple of cards are going to be massively important, and yeah, this is not a mini set. This is a full set, so we only got like a handful of cards that have been shown so far, but we're going to be getting 2 full booster packs worth of cards, and it's safe to assume that, you know, that's going to be 120 or so like unique cards. So really excited. It's going to be absolutely super fun. I say 120, maybe it's more. I forget, like, how much was in Spacetime Smackdown? It'll be similar to Spacetime Smackdown in terms of how many cards we get. But anyway, we've seen a lot of different cards, so we're going to get right into it, and we're going to talk about them. So I've been kind of thinking about how I wanted to structure this video because there's a lot to talk about. Of course, we could go right into Solgaleo EX and Lunala EX. These are sort of the flagship Pokemon of the expansion. Now, what's really interesting here is that these are 2 EX Pokemon that are Stage 2 Pokemon. And what we've seen over the last like 3 or 4 expansions is that all of the flagship cards, really the frontrunner cards for the new expansions, have been basic EX Pokemon, and they have been really dominating Pokemon TCG Pocket for a long time. And one of the big things that I think a lot of people have been a little bit disappointed with Pokemon Pocket, or have been, I guess, expressing their desire for things to change, is the viability and the overall quality of Stage 2 Pokemon, evolution Pokemon in Pokemon Pocket. The game has been pretty dominated by basic Pokemon for a very long time now, and now with these 2 cards being, of course, very strong cards, but being the flagship cards from the set being Stage 2 Pokemon, I think that definitely could signify a change to the metagame. The other thing to mention here, which we're probably just going to go ahead and we're just going to lay it out there, right? Because to be fair, there is one card that I think deserves more mention than really anything else. It'll probably be the most substantial thing that we talk about in today's video, and that is going to be Rare Candy. Yes, you read that correctly. You probably already know, but Rare Candy is coming to Pokemon TCG Pocket, and this is a massive deal. I think this is a bigger deal than maybe anybody realizes. I honestly never expected to see Rare Candy come to Pokemon Pocket for a variety of reasons. I think that right now, Stage 2 Pokemon are not that great. I think we all kind of agree with that. There's a couple that are pretty good, pretty standout, but as a whole, Stage 2 Pokemon really aren't that great. And I think that this set is going to be the #1 kind of beginning to the rise of these Stage 2 Pokemon. I think that with Rare Candy, with the new Legendary EX Pokemon being Stage 2 Pokemon, I think we're going to see a ton of evolution Pokemon support, which could signify a massive change to Pokemon Pocket. So we're going to go ahead, we'll talk about Rare Candy, and then we'll go into all of the cards, and then we're just going to go ahead and talk about how I really think that the metagame is going to change, specifically because of Rare Candy. So this card reads, and this is actually, I believe, the exact same card that is in the official card game, but Rare Candy reads, it is a item card. It reads that you choose one of your basic Pokemon in play, and if you have a Stage 2 card in your hand that evolves from that Pokemon, put that card onto that basic Pokemon to evolve it, skipping the Stage 1. You cannot use this card during your first turn or on a basic Pokemon that was put into play this turn. So, a lot of text here. In fact, this might be the most text-heavy card ever put into Pokemon Pocket. Of otherwise very simple game, this card definitely has sort of a lot of stipulations to it. But realistically, what this card reads is that you can skip that middle evolution when you're, evolving up to a Stage 2 Pokemon. You can go straight from, your Sprigatito into your Meowscarada. You can go straight from your Charmander into your Charizard, and every other Stage 2 Pokemon that is as well. However, we cannot do it on our first turn, of course, and then we cannot do it on any other turn where we've played that basic Pokemon that turn. So it's the same as sort of the same rules. It's just a lot of text to say that way, but basically, you have to wait another turn to evolve into that Stage 2, just like you would have to wait to your next turn to evolve into that Stage 1 Pokemon. However, now with Rare Candy, we can skip that middle evolution and go straight to our Stage 2 Pokemon. Now, I think a lot of people are maybe thinking that Because we have Rare Candy, we don't need to run the Stage 1 Pokemon, but I don't really believe that that's the case. Now, Pokemon Pocket only has 20 cards in our deck, so if we're playing 2 copies of Rare Candy, we've got Professor's Research, we've got a lot of potential to just go ahead and go straight into our Stage 2 Pokemon on our second turn, which is something very important to talk about with Rare Candy. I think that this is going to be not only really good for any Stage 2 deck, but it's going to be specifically really good in decks that are running Stage 2 Pokemon that have 2 energy in their attack cost, or maybe 3 energies and an extra way to get that additional energy, right? So there's going to be a lot of different, I suppose, Pokemon that are Stage 2 Pokemon that are going to have value from this more than other Stage 2 Pokemon, but this should be a very, very good consistency buff to really any Stage 2 deck. Things like Charizard, things like Blastoise, really things that aren't necessarily super fast pace, but just more consistently giving us more options to be able to evolve into that Charizard or that Blastoise is going to be definitely really, really good. But I think for the most part, we're still going to be playing at least one copy of that middle evolution. We'll have to see as time goes on, right? Because we're not always guaranteed to have Rare Candy, and we can only run 2 rare candies in the deck. So if we're playing more than, 2 Stage 2 Pokemon, we're probably still going to be a little bit reliant on drawing those Stage 1s. Of course, it just adds even a little bit more consistency to the deck. What we can do, though, is maybe cut those, 1 or 2 copies even of that Stage 1 Pokemon, and we can play things like Pokemon Communications to increase the odds of drawing into that Stage 2 Pokemon, or in certain scenarios, like, again, the big one that I'm going to talk about in this video is Meowscarada, because, Meowscarada is an incredible Pokemon, but also the evolution line's really relevant here, because Sprigatito's Cry for Help attack allows it to take a grass Pokemon out of your deck. It might even be even more consistent for us to just play like Sprigatito, and then, use that attack, and then basically have like a really high chance of just immediately pulling that Meowscarada from our deck, and then on the following turn, if we have Rare Candy, we can evolve and then attack, right? If we're going second, we can attack on our second turn for literally 2 energies and just turn 2 Meowscarada, which is absolutely crazy. So there's a lot of scenarios where Rare Candy is going to be insanely good, but for the most part, I think it's going to be relevant in really any Stage 2 deck. It might take a little bit of time, a little bit of theory crafting and testing to see what the best sort of combination of Rare Candy and Stage 1 Pokemon are in your deck list, but I think for the most part, what Rare Candy is probably going to do is really buff a few specific Stage 2 Pokemon that have 2 energy in their attack cost, but it's also going to turn the game a little bit more high rolly, right? Whenever we add like sort of an option for decks to really explode in pace, but that explosion is really reliant on drawing a particular card or 2 particular cards, then the deck is going to feel a little bit RNG. And I think that a lot of people are really excited about Rare Candy, and they're excited about the increase of Stage 2 Pokemon being more relevant. But again, you got to keep in mind that you're going to go up against matches where your opponent just has that Rare Candy Stage 2 on their second turn and you don't, and that's going to feel really bad because it puts you very, very far behind, especially against those decks that can utilize the attack of their Stage 2 Pokemon with maybe only 1 or 2 energies. Rampardos is another one. I'm looking at you, Rampardos, and that's a good thing to talk about as well. Again, we're going to talk about Rare Candy a lot in this video because this is the most important thing. We'll get to the other cards in just a second, but Rampardos is another interesting option because Rare Candy will work with the Fossil. The Fossil counts as a basic Pokemon when it's in play, not when it's in your hand. So there's always that inconsistency with Fossils because we have no way to search them, and you don't start with them because they're not basic Pokemon until they're on your bench. But if that Fossil's on your bench, we can use Rare Candy and evolve into that Stage 2 Fossil Pokemon like Rampardos, which is absolutely terrifying because Rampardos has 1 energy in its attack cost and it does 130. So there's going to be scenarios where even though your opponent is going first, you're going to be facing down a turn 2 Rampardos hitting you for 130. That is entirely possible now with Rare Candy, and that is very, very terrifying. Again, it's going to add consistency to really all Stage 2 decks, but it's going to allow a few Stage 2 decks to be absolutely incredibly explosive, and it's going to feel pretty scary, but also a little bit bad when those decks absolutely high roll you and pop off. It's going to feel very similar to like those Misty decks where they flip like 4 heads on Misty turn 1 and then they just can attack way before you're able to. It's going to be kind of similar to that. So we have to keep our eye out. Again, I don't think a lot of people are fully understanding the implications that Rare Candy is going to do to the overall game, but I do think that Stage 2 Pokemon have been buffed tremendously. Now let's go ahead and take a look at some of the cards here. First and foremost, let's take a look at Solgaleo and Lunala, because these are new, really strong EX Stage 2 Pokemon that have cool abilities and decent attacks, but again, they're Stage 2 Pokemon. So Solgaleo, Metal type, weak to fire, 180 HP. It has the ability Rising Road. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is on your bench, you may switch it with your active Pokemon. So it's basically a free retreat into Solgaleo no matter how many energies are in your active Pokemon's retreat cost. That's very relevant. There's going to be some really interesting scenarios, perhaps with things like Draudigon, perhaps with just some maybe like really tanky wall Pokemon in the active spot that have really high retreat costs that allow us to go into Solgaleo for free without needing to play Leaf or X-Speed. So leading off, or playing Solgaleo is going to be really nice because that 120, even though we do 10 damage to ourselves, it's for 2 metal energies, so we're a little bit limited in the decks that we can play Solgaleo. Like I said, you could play it in Dialga, you could play it in like a Skarmory deck, or really any other deck as long as you're playing metal energies. But the main upside here is that this 120 is 2 energies, right? So again, in that same thing that we talked about with Rare Candy, if we're going second, we can, play our basic Pokemon or start with it. We can attach the energy, next turn, Rare Candy into Solgaleo, attach the second energy, and we can attack. You can literally attack on the same turn that you evolve into that Stage 2 Pokemon with Rare Candy, which means that Pokemon like this, that have 2 energies in their attack cost, are going to be absolutely incredible in those scenarios where we get them up if we're going second and we get them up on our second turn. 120 is nothing to scoff at, especially on a Pokemon with 180 HP. We do have access to Adaman, we still have Red, we have Giovanni, and like I said, we can even put something in the active spot like Draudigon, which we could then retreat for free. We don't have to use Leaf or commit energies to it. That opens up some slots in our deck. This card here I don't think is overly incredibly strong, but I think, again, it has a massive advantage with only 2 energies in its attack cost, which I think is something that, a lot of, Stage 2 Pokemon don't necessarily have. So these types of Pokemon with 2 energies in their attack costs are going to be at a massive advantage. But I think, again, the big upside here is that we have a lot of consistency being able to go into Solgaleo no matter what our leadoff Pokemon is. And I think that's very, very, very important because we don't need to play Leaf or anything like that. Now, to retreat out of Solgaleo, we need 2 energies in our attack cost, but if we have another Solgaleo on our bench, we can, again, free retreat and go right into that Solgaleo. So this is going to be a very, very interesting card. We'll have to see exactly how good it is, but I do expect Solgaleo to be definitely pretty relevant, especially with Rare Candy and the 2 energy attack cost. Lunala is also a very interesting one. This is more of a combo piece. It has, again, 180 HP, retreat cost of 1. It is a Stage 2 Pokemon. It's Psychic type. It's got the ability Psychic Connect. Once during your turn, you may move all psychic energies from one of your benched psychic Pokemon to your active Pokemon. So this is a little bit limiting here. The wording is a little bit interesting, but basically we have to select a single one of our psychic Pokemon and then move all of those energies from that Pokemon to our active Pokemon. Now, we don't know, again, there's probably going to be some other combo piece that is involved with this card that could be really, really strong. We just, again, we have to wait and see, because if there is like a psychic Pokemon that can generate energies on our bench, which again, we do have Giratina, but if there's another Pokemon that can do that, Giratina can really act now as a completely like psychic battery. Like we could just go ahead and just fill up energies on Giratina, and then, whatever's in the active spot, if we just decide once we have Lunala, we can move all of those energies from Giratina to our active Pokemon. Maybe that is Giratina. Like we don't know. Like there's so much flexibility with this card, but it is a Stage 2 Pokemon, so it's going to take up a lot of space in the deck list. So it's interesting. I think that there's going to be some really strong combinations with Lunala, but at the same time, I don't know if it's necessarily always going to be worth running it. We'll have to see whether the strength of this ability and its flexibility to move energies around is worth playing the Pokemon to play the Stage 2 Pokemon in the deck, and including things like Rare Candy. So we'll have to see. This ability is very, very interesting. I think it'll fit probably really well in a specific deck list. We don't necessarily know what all of the pieces of that deck are, but again, we could literally just, do kind of normal stuff here. We could play this in Mewtwo and Giratina. There's a lot of options. We'll just have to see necessarily what the best option is and how good that really is in the metagame. It's a strong ability. The attack is pretty lackluster. It is 2 colorless in its attack cost, but 1 psychic, 2 colorless, that's 3 total, and it's only 100 damage, which does 2-hit KO most Pokemon in the game, especially with some damage modification, but healing is very common in the format right now, so even doing 100 damage twice isn't always enough to 2-hit KO Pokemon, so keep that in mind as well. Yeah, Lunala EX is definitely interesting. I don't know how apparent this card will be in the metagame as much as Solgaleo is, but the ability is definitely really strong, and we have things like Giratina, so we'll have to see. I assume it's probably going to see some play, whether that deck is top tier or not. It will be a deck list, and there will be a strategy that plays Lunala. And then we have all of the starter Pokemon here. There's nothing really too much to talk about. One thing that's interesting is that we did get 2 versions of all of the starter Pokemon, so I don't know necessarily what that means, but there are 2 versions of all of them here. here. So we have Rowlet, we've got Litten here with Heat Tackle, and then we've got Popplio here with Water Gun. And then, like I said, there are actually different versions. Like this Rowlet here has Skill Dive, so we can do 10 damage to one of our opponent's Pokemon for 1 energy. Litten here just with Scratch, and then we have Popplio here with Sing, which can put your opponent's Pokemon to sleep, which is a guaranteed sleep, by the way, as well. So not a bad basic Pokemon. So I don't know exactly what having 2 versions of all of these Pokemon means. I guess that, oh, it actually says it right here. I didn't read. I gotta read, guys. This says Solgaleo pack or Lunala pack. So every pack, depending on which one you open, is gonna at least have a basic Pokemon from the starter line. So that's good at least, and maybe that's sort of the case for the stage 2s as well. I don't know. We'll have to see, but it looks like we're getting 2 options for all of them. These ads keep popping up on my screen. So yeah, that's kind of what that means, I suppose. We also are getting Alolan Meowth. This is a dark type Pokemon, 60 HP, 20 energy in its attack cost. We don't know what the sort of Alolan Persian is yet, but it could be an EX Pokemon. We'll have to see. That could be pretty relevant. Another dark type Pokemon. We also have Oricorio, which has Dazzle Dance, which does 40 damage for 2 psychic energies, and your opponent's Pokemon is now confused. And then we have here, let's skip ahead to Alolan Raichu. So this is a very interesting one. This is kind of what I'm dubbing as sort of the, the inclusion to counter Gyarados in this expansion. Alolan Raichu EX is a Stage 1 Electric-type EX Pokemon. 140 in its attack cost, or HP rather, which is definitely a bit low. I would like to see 150 on stage 1 Pokemon. To me, that's sort of the break point. With Giant Cape, we do go to 160, but there's a lot of things that can KO you, especially with Red at 160. So the amount of HP on this guy does scare me a little bit. Also, retreat cost of 1, I maybe would have liked to see a free retreat on this thing as well, but it does have 3 colorless energies in its attack, Psychic. So this is a splashable card, which again, kind of makes sense why they maybe reduced the other aspects of this card a little bit. It's an electric Pokemon, which is really good. It's a splashable card that we can include to KO Gyarados with this psychic attack here. 60 damage for 3 colorless energies. This attack does 30 more damage for each energies in your opponent's active Pokemon, attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. So Gyarados, even if it discards its own energies, we are doing 90 plus 60 is 150, plus weakness is 170. So we're just cutting it if they have 3 energies, but if they have 4 energies, we are getting the KO. Hitting for weakness as well. We have Red, we have Giovanni. So this is going to be a splashable EX Pokemon that's electric type that should have a very good matchup into Gyarados, which is definitely relevant. Gyarados has been pretty dominant, so it's nice to see this card. Now, I don't know how good in general this card is because, you know, there might be a lot of like scenario. It's similar to like Yanmega basically. I'm comparing this to like Yanmega EX, which saw a little bit of play as a meta counter to things like Darkrai, but for the most part, I don't know how much play Alolan Raichu is going to see unless it really fits really easily in a lot of different decks. But again, it's really nice, no matter how the meta pans out, for us to have a splashable option, Electro-type Pokemon EX option like this, to be able to KO Gyarados a little bit more easily, which I really, really like, you know? And again, we can play Giratina, we can play Dawn, so you could play Alolan Raichu Giratina, and that could be a totally fine strategy, and your matchup against Gyarados would be much, much better. So there's at least some counterplay in place right now to go up against Gyarados. That's how I'm reading this card. Now, Gyarados might be replaced by some other, water-type Pokemon that comes out in this set. We don't know yet, but at least now we have a nice splashable Electro-type counter that's very much akin to Yanmega EX, which we saw a couple sets ago, which was really a counterplay to decks that were weak to Grass-type. So definitely really relevant, and I love this card. I love the art as well here. This is the, the rainbow rare version of Alolan Raichu EX, but a very, very cool Pokemon, and I like these sort of splashable Pokemon. Again, you got to keep in mind that 140 HP is a bit low, but I think the reason why it's low is because it has 3 colorless energy in its attack cost, so we can play it in a lot of different scenarios. We also have Oricorio here. Spiteful Dance, rather. It's a basic psychic Pokemon. 1 energy in its attack cost. 20 damage plus if any of your Pokemon were knocked out by damage from an attack during your opponent's last turn. This attack does 60 more damage. So this is basically Psychic type Marshadow. It's a little bit different. It's got a little bit less HP, but it has 1 energy in its attack cost. And instead of doing 100 damage, it does 80 damage. Now, this is actually really, really cool. Marshadow still sees play. It's still one of my favorite Pokemon in the game. It's really, really nice. But I think, honestly, 80 damage might be a little bit too low. We'll have to see, but 1 energy in the attack cost is really, really relevant. So hopefully there are some Psychic type archetypes that can play Oricorio that are single prize archetypes that, again, I think would be really healthy for the game. But this card is really, really nice, and I'm really happy to see cards like Marshadow kind of finding their way into other types as well. We're probably going to see this as time goes on. Realistically, there's only so many types of Pokemon cards that you can make, so it's nice to, kind of have, slightly changed versions of other cards in different types so that we can play them in different types of decks. Oricorio, Psychic type Marshadow, basically a little bit different, but really nice to see as well. We also have Alolan Vulpix, 80 HP or 60 HP, and Call Forth Cold is the attack. Doesn't do any damage, but you take a water energy from your energy zone and you attach it to this Pokemon. So going second, this could be really, really strong. We have 60 HP, so hopefully we live on that next turn, but maybe we get an Alolan Ninetales EX. We don't know what the Alolan Ninetales is, but it could very well be an EX Pokemon, so being able to generate that extra energy could be really relevant. Again, we don't know what Alolan Ninetales is, but if that Alolan Ninetales is a really good card, then this attack could be really relevant. We'll have to see. Technically speaking, this card is very kind of useless if you're going first, but this attack here can be really good if you're going second and you survive, so keep that in mind. As well, we also have Alolan Marowak. So this actually is a pretty relevant card for a couple scenarios. It's got Burning Boomerang, does 70 damage for 2 fire and a colorless 110 HP, retreat cost of 2. Fire type, by the way. Flip 2 coins. If this attack does 70 damage for each heads, and if at least one of them is heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now burned. So, technically speaking, we have got a 33% chance to do at least 70 damage and burn. We've got a 1 in 3 chance to do 140 damage and burn, and then we've got a 1 in 3 chance to do 0 damage and no burn. So, these RNG cards don't oftentimes see that much play, but there is a supporter card, which we'll take a look at in a little bit, which has synergy with Alolan Marowak, which could make it fairly relevant. We'll have to see, but anyway, there it is. Okay. So Alolan Marowak, and that's all of the Pokemon, I think. Actually, no, there's some more down here. But anyway, let's just go down to it. So here is that's not a Pokemon, that's a supporter. This is the normal art version of Alolan Raichu. So that's what it looks like. Pretty cool. We've already talked about the card here, and then we don't know any info, but this is the stage 2 evolutions. Dartrick has 80 HP, Torracat has 80 HP, and then Brione has 80 HP as well. So there you go. No info there. I don't know why I really talked about it, but we also have Rayquaza EX, which is coming as a promo card. And we don't know exactly. I think there might be a normal art version that we're guaranteed to get, and then this like high rarity version might be like a paid promo, or it might be like a premium pass promo. We'll have to see, but everybody should be able to get at least one copy of Rayquaza EX. Maybe not the full art, but the normal art version is right here. And this card reads, it's got 140 HP. It's a basic colorless Pokemon, which makes sense. I know some people might be confused why it's not Dragon type. It's also flying type, so that's why it's a colorless Pokemon. 140 HP. It's got a retreat cost of 2, which is interesting. Weak to electric. And we have Draco Meteor, similar to Dragonite from Genetic Apex. 4 colorless energies, so a very splashable card here, but 4 energies. One of your opponent's Pokemon is chosen at random 4 times, and then for each Pokemon was chosen, you do 40 damage to it. So it's kind of like a smaller Dragonite attack. So it's 160 total damage split into 4 different ways. This card could be really interesting in some decks. I don't know if I really see Rayquaza being that relevant. It's just not enough damage. Like, there's so much RNG involved. If our opponent has a full bench, like, you could attack 2 or 3 times and still not have enough damage output to take 3 KOs to win the game. So, like, keep that in mind, especially with all of the healing. Irida exists in the water type deck, so doing this much spread damage, like, technically you could do 160 to one Pokemon, right, if they only have one Pokemon, but it's just a really interesting attack. It is colorless, so, I mean, we could play this in a lot of different ways here. I just don't know if this Pokemon's attack is going to be strong enough to really justify playing this over most other cards, but again, we'll take a look at the supporter cards because there are some relevant things that give us a lot more context to the viability of all of these decks. And we've already talked about Rare Candy, of course, but this is Rayquaza, and it's pretty cool. Again, these promo cards typically aren't super strong because, not everybody ends up getting them, but this one is particularly kind of interesting because it's colorless, right? And it can do the spread damage. So another sort of Dragonite Wugtrio type attack, although I don't know if it's as good as Wugtrio. And it's a lot. Like 40 split 4 ways is very RNG dependent. And this card can do a lot of nothing in some scenarios. Also, 140 HP is a little bit awkward. We can definitely get KO'd pretty easily. Revenge KO'd, that is. So anyway, that's all of the Pokemon that we've been shown so far, but we do have a lot of trainer cards, item cards, supporter cards to take a look at here. So let's dive right into it really quickly. The first one is going to be Rotom decks. I don't see a lot of people actually talking about Rotom decks, but this card is actually kind of crazy. So this is an item card, and it reads that you look at the top card of your deck, then you may shuffle your deck if you want to. You don't have to, but you can look at that top card of your deck and then decide whether or not you want to shuffle your deck. Now, this is actually a really strong effect. We don't have a lot of draw effects in the game. At least right now, we do have Professor's Research, but who knows? We might get a Pokemon in this expansion that allows us to just draw the top card of our deck or swap a card in our hand with the top card of our deck, and that could be pretty relevant because then we could swap a card, we could shuffle our deck, and it's like drawing an extra card. But even if we don't get a Pokemon like that, we have Professor's Research. So realistically, we can take a look at least the top one card of our deck, see if it's a card that we want or the card that we really don't want, and then we can shuffle and then choose to play Research to, you know, probably change, I should say, that top card of your deck to increase the odds of finding something that you want off the Research. So it is a very interesting card. It could be relevant, but again, we don't have a lot of space in our deck in Pokemon Pocket, so playing cards like this could add a little bit of consistency to our deck, but I don't believe this is the first effect that we've gotten to take a look at the top card of our deck. So the shuffle effect is what's strong here. I just don't know if it's really necessarily something that I would choose to run, but it is a very, very interesting ability here in this item card, and it's an item card as well. It's not like a supporter card or anything. So yeah, Rotom decks. We also got Rare Candy again. We've already talked about it. We're gonna, after we go over the other supporters, we're just gonna hop into Rare Candy and we're gonna go off about it because I got a lot to say. I don't want this video to be too long, but again, these are very in-depth sort of meta-analyses here to help us get sort of a head start on understanding the best ways to use these cards and how they're gonna affect the metagame, because, you know, it's even more relevant now because shortly after the set comes out, we're gonna be getting the next ranked season, which means that being ahead of the curve is really, really important. So don't forget to like this video and subscribe and stay tuned for the future videos, because if you want to stay up to date on the metagame from day one and even, you know, day -4, whatever we're at right now, this is definitely the best place to go. And like I said, I will keep you guys up to date and prepared for, you know, what's best and what you should be playing for the next ranked season and also tournaments when this new set does come out. But anyway, let's take a look at all of the supporter cards. So we're getting what I call sort of like very sort of specific supporter cards that are like synergy supporters, where they're not like general use. A lot of these are very specific to particular Pokemon or types. So keep that in mind. But anyway, let's take a look at the first one here. This is Llima or Llima. I believe it's Llima. This is a supporter card that reads, put one of your colorless Pokemon that has damage onto it into your hand. That's kind of a crazy effect. We've seen things similar to this. We've seen Budding Expeditioner from Mythical Island, which allowed you to scoop up your Mew EX into your hand. But colorless Pokemon that has any damage onto it into your hand is definitely interesting. This is a card that could pair really well with just really any colorless attack Pokemon or colorless Pokemon that you would typically just use anyway. Things like Arceus, things like the new Rayquaza, but also like there is like the Snorlax decks, right? Which are like, and also like the Regigigas are interesting cards that have a ton of HP that are basic Pokemon. So you can kind of keep those Pokemon in the active spot that have a ton of HP, force your opponent to just like attack it or not attack it, right? And then if they do, we can scoop it up and then just go into like our bench Pokemon, which we've been setting up. So this is a very interesting card. I don't know how relevant it's going to be. It really depends on if there's any colorless Pokemon that are very relevant in the metagame. But I don't necessarily know. Again, like I said, it could work with Arceus. It could work with things like Rayquaza. However, those are attacking Pokemon, so they're going to have energies, which means that if we pick them up and put them into our hand, we're discarding those energies, which is kind of important to keep in mind, right? So that effect does save you from getting KO'd potentially, but it is going to discard those energies, which again, going negative on card advantage and energy advantage isn't always that great. But again, we do have Snorlax, we have Regigigas, we have some colorless Pokemon walls that could be really relevant as well, maybe even things like Kangaskhan. So this is a very interesting card, and I think that it could be actually really good in some niche scenario decks. We'll have to see exactly what comes out in the set, but there is Llima. Next up is Lana, which reads that you can use this card only if you have Arachnid in play. Now, that doesn't mean active Pokemon. That just means on your board, if you have Arachnid, which is a stage 1 water-type bug Pokemon. We don't know what that card is yet, but again, we do know that this supporter card works with it. So if we have an Arachnid in play, you can switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active spot. So this is Cyrus, sort of a well, it is conditional, but a non-conditional like Gust card. By Gust, I mean being able to swap your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active spot. We don't see this a lot. We do have Cyrus, but however, Cyrus requires that Pokemon to have damage onto it. Lana just means that as long as we have Arachnid on our bench or in play, we can just go ahead and move any Pokemon that we want from our opponent's bench to the active spot. Now, that's really relevant. My assumption is that Arachnid is not going to be an EX Pokemon, but it will probably be one of those Pokemon that has sort of the like Arena Trap attacks, similar to like Arbok from Genetic Apex, meaning that Arachnid probably won't be a super strong attacker, but it will have the effect that once it attacks you, it forces you to not be able to retreat. So Lana does kind of work in that. That's my assumption. Again, I don't know, but I'm assuming that'll be the case, so we can kind of play Lana, bring up one of their bench Pokemon, attack it, and force them to stay in the active spot until they get KO'd. So that could be a very cool kind of control strategy with Arachnid. That's my assumption of what this sort of combination is going to be. But very specific. This is specific to one particular Pokemon. So we don't know what Arachnid is yet. Maybe it's a really strong Pokemon and Lana is really, really good. But again, we'll have to see exactly what that pans out to be. We also here have Kiawe? I don't know how to say this man's name here, but this is another supporter card that says, choose one of your Alolan Marowak or Turtonator and take 2 fire energies from your energy zone and attach it to that Pokemon. 2 energies, and then your turn ends. So this is really, really interesting. Now, what I think this is probably going to be used in more often than Alolan Marowak is Turtonator, whatever Turtonator decides to end up being, because Turtonator is a basic Pokemon. So whether it has 2 energies or 3 energies in its attack cost, this could be a very aggressive strategy, kind of an aggro fire type card that allows us to set up that Turtonator in like 1 turn on our first turn, and then next turn we'll be able to attack for 2 or 3 energies, which is really, really relevant, and that's going to be really strong if we're going first as well. So we don't know what Turtonator is yet, but luckily I do think that it's probably going to be somewhat relevant just because of how strong this supporter card is. We have seen Alolan Marowak already. It's a little bit awkward because this card only works for Marowak, which means we have to evolve Cubone, and then when we evolve, our turn also has to end, which means no matter what, we're going 2 turns without doing anything, and Marowak is a pretty strong card, as we've seen. We can go back and take a look at it. Marowak is a pretty strong Pokemon, but waiting until turn 3 to use this Pokemon doesn't feel that good because it is kind of RNG dependent. So keep that in mind. Alolan Marowak is a fine card, but I don't think it's going to be probably as good with this supporter card as Turtonator will probably end up being. We'll have to see. It's just better, I assume, to be able to attack on your second turn consistently and do really aggressive damage in fast-paced fire type, deck like this, than Alolan Marowak. But again, we don't know what Turtonator yet, so keep that in mind, but that's my assumption of what Turtonator is probably going to be like, which I'm actually excited about. Aggro Fire is something that I've been kind of waiting for a long time, and really more aggro decks I think should be relevant in this format with all of these Stage 2 evolution decks seeing play. Next up is Acerola, or I believe is how you say it, Acerola. This reads that choose one of your Palossand or Mimikyu that has damage onto it, and move 40 of its damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. Okay, now, this effect is crazy. This is one of the craziest reading supporter cards I've ever seen. Now, we don't know what Palossand or Mimikyu is yet, but we have some speculation because Mimikyu as a Pokemon is pretty much the same no matter kind of where it sees play. Like, Mimikyu has this like signature ability like Disguise, which typically protects it from getting 1-hit KO'd at full HP. That's like the whole gimmick with Mimikyu. So if we do have a card like that, and let's just say Mimikyu, it's a basic Pokemon, not an EX, it's just sort of one of those basic, things like Spiritomb, things like that. If Mimikyu has like say 50 or 60 HP, then it can take an attack, right, and then not get KO'd with its presumably with its ability, and then we can use Acerola, heal 40 damage from that Mimikyu, actually do that 40 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. Maybe we're at full HP already, or maybe we play a potion on top of that, and then we go back to full HP, your ability resets, and we can attack, and then the cycle continues. That could be absolutely terrifying. So we'll have to see exactly what the Mimikyu card ends up being, but this Acerola effect is very, very strong. So Mimikyu could also be a very annoying sort of wall/aggro Pokemon that I would be really interested in seeing. It's something a card like this could, like if the Mimikyu, like I'm talking about, works the way I'm expecting it to work, then it could be very, very punishing for some of these ramp decks, which again, sort of set up these big attacks, right? So that could be very, very interesting. We could go Mimikyu into that Oricorio, I believe it was. Yeah, the Oricorio here. That could be really, really fun. Like, that could be a really cool strategy. We'll have to see. Again, all sort of presumptions. We don't exactly know what Mimikyu is yet, but I'm assuming that's probably how that card is going to work, which I'm actually really excited to have this single prize, really aggro psychic type archetype, which could be really, really fun and relevant in the metagame, especially considering, what the metagame looks like right now. So I'm really excited about stuff like that. Again, I'm kind of going off the deep end. I'm just sort of making a lot of assumptions here, but Mimikyu, we can kind of make that assumption because we sort of know at least a little bit what Mimikyu is going to be. be. Now, Palossand, I don't know, but it's probably going to be, again, similar to the Kiawe card and Marowak, where it's like you can use it with that Pokemon, but that Pokemon's probably not going to be as good. So I think Turtonator with Kiawe and then Mimikyu with Acerola, those are going to be really interesting archetypes that I'm really excited to see what they end up being. Next up, we've got Mallow. This is a 34-minute video, guys. What is going on? This is Mallow. Heal all damage from one of your Shiinotic, or Serena, and if you do, discard all energy from that Pokemon. So again, I don't know. This is a fairly strong attack if these Pokemon have only 1 energy in their attack cost and they have a lot of HP. We don't know what the Pokemon are yet, but a very, very interesting card here. I assume that Serena and Shiinotic are both going to be grass-type Pokemon, and we also have Ericas as well. So very interesting. But all of these supporter cards seem to be kind of propping up single prize archetypes, which I think is definitely really cool, and hopefully they become somewhat relevant. That's my hope, at least. We also have Sophocles, which is basically Blaine's, but for some electric type Pokemon. So during this turn, attacks used by your Alolan Golem, Vikavolt, or Togedemaru do 30 plus damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. I'm assuming these will all be electric type Pokemon, and that it's going to be like Blaine's. We're going to have an electric type Blaine's deck, which is really fun for me because, again, there's a lot of like fast-paced like electric type cards that could be pretty relevant. Like we could have like a return of OG, Genetic Apex Pikachu, right? And we could play things like Alolan Golem in it, or Vikavolt if it's a strong secondary attacking option, and then we can boost that damage by 30. There's a lot of potential here with this card. Again, we don't know what these Pokemon are yet, so we have to wait and see, but I'm really excited to see sort of a Blaine's type card here in Sophocles be included in the electric type archetype. I'm really curious to see what these Pokemon end up looking like. And then lastly, we have Lillie, and this is actually interesting because this is our first immersive supporter card. We don't know what other immersive cards are going to be in the set, but Lillie is a supporter card, and it is a immersive. This is the immersive version. We're going to have a normal version of this card too, but pretty cool that we have an immersive supporter card. This card reads heal 60 damage from one of your stage 2 Pokemon. So, okay, so some more additional stage 2 Pokemon support. Now, I read this and I think to myself, okay, 60 damage is a lot of healing. Some of these stage 2 Pokemon have 180 HP. We can slap a giant cape on them. They'll go to 200. We can heal 60 in one turn, so that's effectively 260 HP if we really max it out. That's pretty relevant, but at the same time, like there's a lot of Pokemon that are 2-KOing you anyway. So this is a card that's going to help these stage 2 decks a little bit better against maybe the tempo archetypes that might rise up in this particular expansion. Tempo is basically non-existent in the game right now. It's either aggro or ramp decks and mid-range decks like Giratina Darkrai, like Gyarados, or you're playing some aggro type stuff, like Skarmory, like Carnivine and Arceus. So if tempo does come back, this could be a very important card to allow us to live 2 hits from maybe like a tempo attack or things like a Pikachu EX from Genetic Apex or something like that. So really interested to see how Lillie affects that metagame and affects those stage 2 decks. But anyway, guys, that's it. Those are all of the cards, and a lot of them are very interesting. So we're gonna go ahead and talk a little bit more about Rare Candy because that's sort of the main bread and butter that we've seen here today, probably the biggest deal. And we're gonna go in depth for the next 5 or 10 minutes and talk about Rare Candy, but we should get more information in the upcoming days. Like I said, it is Thursday today. This expansion releases on Wednesday, so we'll get the full set release a day or two before the set comes out. But in the meantime, over the next few days, we'll probably get some more additional information regarding the set as it releases. If we go down here as well, this details sort of the promo event with Rayquaza. So this is coming out as a solo battle event, so we should definitely be able to get the normal art Rayquaza if you grind out those solo battles and you open up those promo packs. And then also right here, it seems to be, this is probably a paid inclusion, or it's maybe, I don't know exactly, half-year anniversary, 6 months. Special missions will be running until May 28th. Okay, so we should be able to get, whether you're paid or not, free to play or not, you should be able to get the full art Rayquaza, the playmat, which I really love here, and the coin, the Shaman coin, as well as some new accessories, all for free, which is really, really exciting. I can't believe it's been 6 months since this game came out. That's absolutely crazy to me. Things have changed so much, but I love Pokemon Pocket. Comment below if you love Pokemon Pocket, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Okay, so long video, and I do apologize, but again, we go in depth here on the channel. That's what this is all about. We love talking about this stuff. We've been waiting a month nearly for all of this new information, so I'm really excited. Now let's talk about Rare Candy, because Rare Candy is a doozy. This is going to be the #1 card that changes the metagame. That isn't Pokemon, I should say. And I think that this has a ton of potential, but again, we really got to talk about where Rare Candy is going to be useful. Sure, you can play Rare Candy with Charizard, and you'll more consistently get that Charizard out, but that's not always, the best case scenario to play Rare Candy. There's a lot of other Pokemon that I think would benefit more from Rare Candy, and that, again, like I said, is going to be those faster paced, base, less energy attack cost stage 2 Pokemon. We have a few of them right now, but we don't have all of the info. We're probably going to get some more relevant Pokemon like that. Solgaleo is an option. Like I said, a card like this to me is very scary with Rare Candy because there's nothing stopping our opponent from, again, going second and then turn 2 hitting us with a Soul Breaker 120 with 100 HP Pokemon. And that's scary to me. I'm scared because that's terrifying and that's sort of a high roll strategy. So there are going to be those scenarios where these stage 2 decks have the ability to just absolutely pop off and explode in pace. And that, again, is going to feel a little bit bad if we are not the one where that happens. But again, there are other scenarios that aren't Solgaleo that this could be really effective in. So here's what we're going to do here. We're on PokemonZone.com. They have some really interesting tools. So I'm going to go ahead and advanced search here for cards, and this should allow us to filter, right? So we're going to go ahead and we're just going to select Stage 2 Pokemon, and we're going to search. So here are all of the Stage 2 Pokemon in Pokemon Pocket right now. Of course, we've got Charizard EX from Genetic Apex, very, very relevant, but even things like Victory Bell, like keep in mind, like this is the old Victory Bell from Genetic Apex. This is a Stage 2 Pokemon with 2 energies and its attack cost with a really, really strong ability. So why not, Victory Bell is something that would actually benefit a lot from Rare Candy because, we could pop off into Victory Bell on our second turn and just start Vine Whipping for 60, but also have this Flagrant Flower Trap ability. So cards like this, like I said, with 2 energies and their attack cost are a little bit more scary to me now. If we go down here, of course, we've got Blastoise, right? So maybe a Rare Candy into a Misty Flip means that we're getting a hit by, Blastoise from early on in the game, which is, again, pretty terrifying. So keep in mind, Blastoise is seeing some play right now, and Rare Candy certainly going to make it a little bit better. But what about Greninja? What about Water Shuriken Greninja? What about the decks that, aren't necessarily focused around Stage 2 Pokemon to attack, but really do incorporate these Stage 2 Pokemon into their strategy? Greninja is a great example of that. Now we can go ahead and get that Water Shuriken Greninja out a turn earlier, or even more consistently, and that is very, very scary for those, Gyarados decks or those Palkia Greninja decks or those Darkrai Greninja decks, right? So Greninja is a very, very good example of maybe not something that people have thought of right from the get-go, but something that could be heavily affected by Rare Candy. Let's keep going here, and we'll take a look at some other Pokemon. What about this Stage 2 Gengar with 1 energy, its attack cost? We could go ahead and start attacking with Bother. Here are 50 damage, and your opponent cannot use supporter cards during their next turn. This could be hilarious. If we get this Gengar out on turn 2 and we start bothering our opponent, literally doing 50 damage, then all of a sudden they can't use supporter cards for the rest of the game. That is hilarious. Like, that's crazy. Think about the potential. And because we have 1 energy and their attack cost, we could actually go first, and if we get the Gengar Rare Candy combination, we can actually do this on our second turn going first. Very similar to Rampardos, very scary. Gardevoir is another one. Gardevoir saw a lot of play because its effect is really, really strong in Psychic type decks, but now we can go into Gardevoir even more consistently. We don't need to evolve into that Kirlia. That's a big deal. Things like Gardevoir could see a rise in play. They could become more relevant here, and that could mean a lot of different things for a lot of different Psychic type decks. So a very interesting thing to keep in mind. Gardevoir has always been a good card, but hasn't necessarily seen any play since the Genetic Apex Mythical Island days. Maybe it makes a return. Who knows? We'll have to see here. Let's keep going a little bit. Gengar EX, even the EX version is interesting as well, even though it has 3 energies and its attack cost, which means even if we Rare Candy, we're going to have to wait a turn to attack. The effect goes into a play of its ability once it hits the field in the active spot. So if this Pokemon's in the active spot, your opponent can't even use supporter cards from their hand. So we could just play like a straight up Gengar EX or a baby Gengar deck and then consistently get Gengar out on turn 2. And whether we're able to attack or not, we can stop our opponent from using supporter cards from very early on in the game, which again is very interesting. We could play Team Rocket Grunt. There's a lot of scenarios here. I'm really, really excited for the possibilities in both of these Gengar cards, which are really fun and control type cards. Kabutops is kind of another one. I mean, this is 1 energy and its attack cost, so what's stopping us from just, attaching a giant cape, going into Kabutops turn 2 and just start leech lifing from the very beginning? Again, 1 energy in the attack cost. Very, very interesting. We do have Drive Off Pidgeot. I don't think Drive Off Pidgeot is a very, very good card in my opinion. Things like, Alakazam is also interesting because this is a card comparable to Gallade because it does more damage based off of how many energy are in your opponent's attack cost. So the pace of cards like Alakazam and Gallade aren't going to matter too much because they kind of rely on your opponent having a lot of energies, which means they're more relevant late in the game anyway, but it will give those types of decks a little bit more consistency. Let's go ahead and keep scrolling here. We'll find some other options. We do have Jungle Totem Superior. And again, similar to Gardevoir, Jungle Totem Superior could see a rise in play. You got to keep in mind, this card works for all types of Pokemon as long as they have grass energy in their attack cost, right? So this could work for Rayquaza, the new Rayquaza EX. We could attack with that Rayquaza attack with only 2 energies in our attack cost as long as Superior is in play, because those grass energies now count as 4 grass energies, and we only need technically 2 to attack with that Rayquaza EX. That's pretty cool. Also, again, Celebi, gets boosted by Superior, and now we can get Superior out even earlier. So a lot of stage 2 Pokemon that maybe weren't necessarily at the top of your mind will probably be a lot more relevant and a lot more dangerous now with the inclusion of course, Rare Candy. We've got Scolipede. I don't think Scolipede's really going to come back and see a lot of play personally. What about Infernape? What about a 140 turn 2 Infernape? Does that scare you? It should scare you because it is entirely possible. Now, we are discarding all of the energies from Infernape, but being able to use this attack technically on turn 2 is absolutely crazy. And again, Rare Candy is an item card, which means we could possibly use Red on that same turn, or Giovanni hit for 150, 160. That's a turn 2 KO on a lot of Pokemon in the game. Infernape is very, very scary. Going to be one of the most aggressive, explosive stage 2 Pokemon in the game now with a Rare Candy, and that is absolutely terrifying to me. Let's go ahead, let's keep going, let's find some other options here. What about Togekiss? What about Togekiss, right? With Cynthia. Now we can go ahead and we can do a ton of damage with this Pokemon here. During your next turn, this Pokemon's Overdrive Smash attack does 60 damage, but 2 energies in our attack cost, which means we can do 60 damage on our second turn. Turn 3, hit for 120. We also have Cynthia. So Togekiss could be, again, very, very relevant. A lot of these stage 2 Pokemon that necessarily weren't super relevant before now have a ton of potential in this new metagame with Rare Candy. So all kind of theory crafting stuff. Here is Rampardos. Again, we're all terrified of a turn 2 130 HP or 130 damage Rampardos because it's going to happen. Trust me, it will happen, and it's going to be absolutely terrifying, and there's really nothing you can do about it. Rampardos is scary as is, and sometimes they get that out on turn 3, so getting it out a turn earlier could just mean it's that much crazier, especially since it's got 150 HP. So yeah, Rampardos is something I am also very, very afraid of. The other thing I wanted to mention too as well is Magnezone. So I know some people like Magnezone's one of the more popular stage 2 Pokemon. And yes, technically it could benefit from Rare Candy. This is one of the few stage 2 Pokemon that I think doesn't want to use Rare Candy because of course we have to go into that stage 1 Magneton to accelerate those energies to then go into Magnezone. So I do think that Rare Candy is going to make decks like Meowscarada and Magnezone, or really any Magnezone deck, a little bit better. But I do think that Magnezone is one of the few stage 2 Pokemon that probably won't utilize Rare Candy, so keep that in mind. Okay, what else do we have here? Some other stage 2 Pokemon that I think definitely could be a little bit scary with the inclusion of Rare Candy. Now, we talked about Gallade, so technically Gallade could energize Blade on turn 2, but it's not going to get the full damage potential, right? Because we need energies in our opponent's, attached to our opponent's Pokemon. So they're probably going to take a couple turns to do that. So Gallade's a little bit stronger in the late game, even though technically we could attack on turn 2 with Gallade. Definitely kind of scary as well. Let's see here. What else do we have? We've got the Reckless Shearing Garchomp. So we could go ahead and just Dragon Claw turn 2, right? And we could start shearing from the very beginning. This card also works with Cynthia, so that could be terrifying as well. Garchomp could be relevant. It really could be. I'm actually kind of terrified about it. And I'm actually excited. I'm terrified and excited at the same time. But anyway, yeah, there it is. So let's see here. I don't think Garchomp EX will be good. I mean, technically we could linear attack on our second turn. That could be actually pretty scary. Like double Cyrus, turn 2 linear attack Garchomp could be kind of terrifying, right? Now Dragon Claw, like this card is pretty underwhelming, but being able to linear attack like on turn 2 technically is really scary because we could really do some serious damage to a bench Pokemon and then bring it in with Cyrus, right? So we could technically go, if we're going second, we could go, turn 2 Garchomp, linear attack the bench, next turn Cyrus, Dragon Claw for KO 150. That's pretty scary. Garchomp EX could definitely be a little bit stronger than it definitely was previously, so keep that in mind. There's so many scenarios where Rare Candy is going to be able to affect these Pokemon. And then the big one here, which we're going to get to right now, the big one that I want to talk about is actually Meowscarada and Beedrill. So Meowscarada, I think, is probably the one Pokemon, at least that we have right now, and we're going to wrap up this video soon, is probably most heavily impacted by Rare Candy because Meowscarada is a really, really relevant stage 2 single prize Pokemon that hits for 130 on EX Pokemon, but again, 2 energies in our attack cost. So if we are going second, like the dream scenario with Meowscarada is that we have Sprigatito with the Cry for Family attack. So on turn 2, we attach to Sprigatito, we use that effect, and we can pull a grass Pokemon out of our deck. So we're thinning our deck. The likelihood of us having that Meowscarada on turn 2 is even higher. All we need is Rare Candy, and then on our second turn, we can straight up go from Sprigatito into Meowscarada and then hit for 130 for 2 energies with a 140 HP Pokemon with Giant Cape. That is terrifying. Meowscarada is one of the most relevant Pokemon in the game right now, and I think that it's probably going to benefit more than any other card from Rare Candy, and I think to me that is absolutely just incredible. It's going to be super good. And right now, again, we play Meowscarada with Magnezone, right? But most of the time, I should say, we play it with Magnezone. But we talked about how Magnezone isn't super relevant with Rare Candy because we want that middle evolution, right? To accelerate those energies. So maybe there's another Pokemon that we can pair with Meowscarada. And I think you already know where we're going with this, and that is Beedrill. Nobody wants, I'm telling you this right now, there isn't a single person in the world that is going to enjoy a turn 2 Beedrill Crushing Spear for 80 damage, discarding an energy from our active Pokemon. That is like the most just disgusting thing that could happen in a game of Pokemon Pocket. And now with Rare Candy, it is entirely possible. We can play a deck with Meowscarada and Beedrill and much more consistently get these Pokemon out on turn 2. But even if not on turn 2, just out more consistently, right? We can kind of thin the deck, thin a Weedle out of our deck with Weedle's attack. We can thin Grass Pokemon out of our deck with Sprigatito. We can go directly into Beedrill. We can go directly into Meowscarada and much more consistently get this Crushing Spear off. And again, on turn 2, this attack is absolutely terrifying. So my first impression from Rare Candy is that these Meowscarada decks, specifically Meowscarada with Beedrill, is going to be that much more terrifying. Again, 2 Pokemon with really good evolution lines, really good attacks that are just really relevant in the metagame right now, but 2 energies in their attack cost, so that really does scare me. Now, the other thing that I think some people have mentioned, which I'm not as high on personally, is Charizard EX, the new one. Now, this Charizard is interesting. So, technically speaking, going first, we could, we could just play our Charmander in the active spot. Turn 2, if we get Charizard and we get Rare Candy, now turn 2 going first, we have a Charizard EX and we can stoke, and then on our third turn, we will have Charizard with 100 with enough energies to attack for 150. So that is relevant. That's just relevant information, but at the same time, we're still waiting for turn 3 to attack, and it's only 150 damage. So I don't know. Like I don't love Charizard as much with Rare Candy as I do the other cards. I could be wrong about that. Maybe Charizard is insane. Maybe Stoke Charizard is insane with Rare Candy, but it's not something that I'm necessarily as high on right now. I actually think that this Charizard does best with maybe some aggro fire type Pokemon, where we actually just sort of wait to evolve into Charizard. We can take our time, and Charizard is actually the last Pokemon we go into, and then we just sort of stoke, and then we finish off our opponent's KO because they can't KO us for that one, in that one turn, right? We have enough HP to live an attack, and then we can just Steam Artillery the next last turn to take that last KO. That's where I think Charizard shines, but we'll have to see, because this is a very interesting card, and it does definitely get buffed by Rare Candy. So realistically, every Stage 2 deck or Pokemon in the game is going to be influenced by Rare Candy. It will be improved by Rare Candy, but I think more specifically, some of these more specific Stage 2 Pokemon with, again, 2 energies or 1 energy in their attack cost are going to be much more relevant now with Rare Candy in the format. Much more explosive, and I think that's going to change the game a lot. Stage 2 Pokemon have needed this support for a very long time, and I think the main thing is that I think maybe a lot of people are assuming that all Stage 2 Pokemon are going to be really good now because Rare Candy. I don't think that's the case. I think that what Rare Candy is going to do is make bad Stage 2 Pokemon decent, and it's going to make good Stage 2 Pokemon really good. So I think the same kind of Stage 2 Pokemon that were in the game previously are still going to be relevant, but they're just going to be even better now. They're going to be able to compete with some of these, non-EX or non-Stage 2 decks like Giratina, like Darkrai, like Arceus, like Palkia. Like all of these basic EX Pokemon now are going to be probably on a little bit more of an even playing field to these evolution Pokemon, which I think is really good. So we'll have to see. Maybe Rare Candy's busted. Maybe the entire metagame shifts towards these Stage 2 decks. I don't know. I really don't. We'll have to wait and see. But again, hopefully this video was maybe a little bit interesting to you guys. And I apologize for talking so long. But again, we've waited so long for these new cards, and I can just talk all day about it. So I really do apologize for how long I was talking in this video and how in depth we've really went. But hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and hopefully this video was somewhat interesting to you guys. Let's go back to the the article here, and here it is. Celestial Guardians coming out Wednesday, April 30th. Tons of great new cards. The metagame is going to change a lot. Again, don't forget to like the video and stay tuned, because this is going to be the channel. This is the place to go for all of the most relevant info. And then again, once the tournaments come out and ranked battles come out, we're going to have all that data ready for you guys. And I'm going to let you know what is best and what's not best. So stay tuned for that. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe, guys. Peace out. Long video today. I apologize. We'll see you guys later. Have a good one. And yeah. Bye.